Hello, everyone, and welcome to Perspective in Practice, a leadership and development interview series hosted by Break the Norm Leadership. I am your I am your host today, Rachel, and I am here with Taryn Talley, head of marketing at Position Squared. How are you, Taryn?
I'm well. How are you today?
I'm great. So, Taryn, I would love to just kind of start out with you sharing a little bit about your leadership journey, like your origin story. Share with us.
Yeah. So I've had a career. So this month is my 28th year in digital. So what that means was like I was an early, what they used to refer to as a netizen. So, I was doing display ads and landing pages in the mid to late 90s. So I've had a long career, right? And throughout that career, I've had probably about 15 years of it of strong leadership, building teams, leading efforts. For me, and I think we talked about this, when we talked a week ago, that it's really been a journey, and I think, not only as a marketer, like so somebody transitioning from design to marketing, but in my leadership journey as well, from where I started to where I am now, right? And all of the things that influence that I come to bear. So like for me, if you want, I can dive into it a little bit deeper if you'd like.
Yeah, share with us like a little bit, and then we'll just kind of keep inching in as we go.
Yeah, so I think the most important thing to realize, right, in our career journeys or leadership journeys is where we start is typically not where we where we leave off, right? So it's we're starting new from based on the things that we know have known at that time, right? And as you grow, as you go through your career and you advance, you keep continually learning, if you're a lifelong learner. I mean, I know there's some people who don't want to learn anything after a certain point. I'm kind of a sponge. So like I just want to soak it up. So I look for things that help me grow as a human being and as a person, as a leader, as a marketer.
Yes, no, I love that because I remember when I was young in my leadership career, I heard somebody say, all these people, all these leaders come to you and say, "Oh, I have 20 years experience. I have 10 years of experience." But in reality, they just have done 1 year of experience 10 times because they haven't taken the time to like learn and grow and develop. So I love that you kind of put such a strong emphasis on that of just continuously learning and growing and bettering yourself, I guess, as a leader. So, how have your leadership and life experiences like shaped the type of leader you are today?
So starting out, right, for me it was when you go into the business world, and I started at a small ISP, right, where I had no leadership, opportunity. And I was just like that web designer from back in the day, just cranking out the work. I had actually moved into a smaller business, so like a small design business, lost that position. So it was my first layoff. I've had six throughout a career. And I moved into Bank One. And Bank One was my first kind of like real corporate job. So it was like, I was coming to it from just the sum of my experience so far. So my education in design, my experience at the ISP, my experience at the small, design-based firm, and then brought that to Bank One. At Bank One, I had an opportunity to lead a team of 10, right? And I mean, I was young in the career, like late 20s, almost approaching 30, and I've never managed people before. So my style that I had at the time was everything I've experienced up until that point, right? So you have influence from family members. So you see what they're doing, how they lead, how they talk about their work experience. You have it from like the early jobs, right? So my early jobs are in a kitchen. So like I worked my way through college, working a restaurant line. And if anybody who's ever worked in a restaurant knows, it's not one known for inclusive, kind leadership or a lot of yelling.
Yes.
So you have all this experience that you kind of suck up as the sponge, and then as you're forging your new path, you start going through it and start some of those behaviors and some of those learned, I should say, learned behaviors start popping up. Now, with that being said, that's not always the best way to go forward, right? It's, when you're doing that, it might not fit the situation you're in. So for me, that was one of my first learnings, right? Is that role as a team lead of 10 people, it's nine designers and a Java developer. And I was focused on production. I was focused on numbers. I was focused on metrics, right? And I've always had a strong, real, it's kind of like a bit of a superpower, but empathy. So I could still relate to people, still help people, talk them down, talk them through, right? Just listen to them. But my mindset was production oriented. So in a production oriented environment, it's hard to prioritize the team. So it wasn't until I got my first 360 review, which I was like, oh, damn, like that's not good. Like I actually was like, it was kind of hurtful. And then I realized that it was like, that's how the perceptions were, right? And that really kind of changed this. It was the start of my change
Yeah.
in the late 20s of like, I don't want to be that person because what I ended up being? My
Mm.
dad. So my dad was very very like by the book, put the hammer down. Like you would nowadays people would consider him a toxic leader, right? But back in the day, he was the dude getting results.
Yeah.
And I started realizing I was mirroring that kind of behavior. And
Yeah.
that's when I took a pause.
No, that's so funny that you say that because as I'm like thinking about this, like I'm just thinking about kind of some of my first leadership experiences too, and just kind of watching people. And I just kind of always thought like when the pressure was high, like it was just expected that the leader has a meltdown, like a toxic meltdown. And that was just like what leaders do. And then I
Yeah.
was had that experience for the first time myself when somebody was like, what is going on? And I was like, I don't know, isn't that what all leaders do? And before I really started to have those self-reflective moments where I kind of like you was like, oh God, like I'm turning into somebody I know. I don't like this. Like, what do I need to do to change that? So I'd love to hear a little bit more about like where did you go from there? Like, what did you do?
Yeah. So I took a couple year pause on leadership. I just stayed with the sole contributor role. So I moved into a startup that lasted for about 8 months, lost their second round of funding. So I was back on the market, yet another layoff out of the career.
Mhm,
And I got an opportunity to consult with AstraZeneca.
mhm,
So a big drug company. I was doing this whole contributor work and I was really excelling, just doing my work. And it got to the point where I became the a global creative director for Seroquel, which is a drug for bipolar schizophrenia. And they wanted me to bring on a design source. And I was like, ugh. Thinking back on that first leadership thing, I was a little hesitant, but I was like, okay. And I changed my approach. I led with not so much what I've learned, that scaffolding I built around me as a young kind of business person, but I fell back on my core skills, right? Which is like just listening, um, having that empathy, prioritizing people a little bit more, right? And working together. So, and being able to trust too, like, because I also think that leadership's a lot about trust,
huh,
and being able to delegate, but you just can't drop something off. You have to work with them, right? So, like, there's a nurturing aspect to a leadership role. And I don't think it's done enough, to be honest. But so I had a successful instance there of doing that. I moved over, so my project with them was ending after 6 years. So I jumped over to another role, right, which was the sole contributor. I didn't get back to team leadership until about 2010. So that was about 14 years into the career. And by that time, I had a much stronger footing for leadership.
yeah. I think that sometimes one of the biggest challenges is like the pressure that organizations put on leaders with their metrics. And then you look at the style of leadership that you're talking about, like the more nurturing, charismatic servant leader type thing. And people are like, oh no, like I don't have enough time to do this. I have these metrics to hit, not realizing that like if you take the time up front to kind of build and nurture those relationships, like the metrics will come, or sometimes you'll like surpass them. Did you find a similar outcome with that, or did you?
Exactly. Yeah, the work got done, right? So, like, I'll just be very blunt about this. You don't have to be a jerk to get things done. Like, you can actually nurture people, help develop them, give them opportunity, and help them grow, right? And still get the work done. Like, it can be done. I'm living evidence that it can be done, right? You just have to find the right balance of things to really inspire people, right? But it
Yeah.
wasn't until for me, I think it was about 2010, I had the site in my, I think my third leadership opportunity, small team of a couple people, and I immediately ran into conflict.
Yeah.
So I came into an existing team that was pretty well set, and I had somebody who was having some mental health issues, right? Um, they they were spinning out of control. So like I've had to learn the things I've learned on leadership, they don't teach you in an MBA program.
Mm,
They don't teach you in college, right? Your parents don't teach you this, but I had to deal with somebody and address their issues and actually go through that process of terminating them,
mm,
right? And I mean, I learned so much about leadership and being a team lead at that moment of just like putting the work first, but also trying to give this person some help, right? When they weren't really in that kind of space.
yeah.
And it was a saga for about 6 months. And what complicated the factor was at this job, her father was 3 levels above, right? So there was a nepotistic angle to it. So it's like the challenges that leaders face, like we have to take that all in. And it just becomes, and I think I mentioned this to you before, an arrow in your quiver, right? So if you've got that leadership quiver, you have to learn how to work with people, right? Learn how that, like, set the right tone. You've got to, kind of be very clear in your communication, right? And follow up. And there's all these little things that you'll learn. It's not just about, like, for me, I think sometimes people think that you're just sitting in the corner office as a leader and just kind of just, I don't know, checking the boxes and just being like, hey, is this done? Is this done? Is this done? It's so much, much more. And so like in every role I've learned something, right? That's helped me add those skills or add that capability to myself as a leader.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So you spoke about being effective as a leader, but not necessarily liked early in your career. So what is the value of being liked, like synonymously with being trusted?
Well, I mean, I think for me, it's not so much like in the most basic of terms, right? It's did they do the work? Yeah. Did they like me as a person? Probably. I mean, I can be charming and funny and supportive and do things with them and for them and, like be a positive force. But I think for me, it was my work style, right, was causing that stress and that anxiety. So I don't know if it was likability as much as I was meeting. So it's kind of like your approach is you're the square peg and the team is the round hole, and you just keep jamming your view or your thoughts or your like process and procedures and however you come to the work into something that it just doesn't fit, right? And I
Like
think that's
present
what, like, for me,
thing.
yeah, and I mean, I think that's really what I learned, right? Was just like you have to change style sometimes depending on who you're leading. And I found that out later in my career, right? Because I'm a bit I've had introverted moments, but I'm a bit of an extrovert. I think I'm an NENTJ.
Yeah,
So like, but I was working with people that were very high on the introverted side. So I can be somewhat overwhelming to
yeah,
people. I know that, right? I recognize that I can be overwhelming. And I've always had to pivot and change my leadership style. So when I was managing a team at 20, I had to adjust my style in like 20 different micro directions to get the very most out of the team, right?
yeah.
And to offer them that support. But I want to talk about a little bit about my background. So it was in that 2010 space, so my third opportunity, and I was just connecting with a tribal community in Delaware, right? And so I'm a mixed Indigenous person. So I'm Black. I'm both. I should say not both. European, African, and Indigenous. So that's my background. But I've never really grown up with that Indigenous knowledge or community before, right? I've been to reservations. I studied the culture from the kind of the colonizer's perspective, just being transparent. And I had an opportunity to join a tribal community.
Uh-huh.
So this is before I transitioned or anything. So this is, early on. And, I met a brother of mine, Little Bear, and he introduced me. He said, I've got two tribal communities in this area. Because one supports Two Spirit and is led by a Two Spirit. If you don't know what that term is, it's a modern term of like 30 plus years old because most indigenous tribes have lost their language and their words for their gender. So Two Spirit is a very complex gender concept, um, much more complex than just the two words, right? But it encompasses so many different presentations of gender and sexuality.
Mhm.
So he said, and at that point, it was kind of just starting getting the therapy and talking through, am I trans? Like it's been an on and off thing since I was like 9, 10. And
Mhm.
I kind of kept jumping back in the closet. So I was starting to unpack that. So when he asked me, he goes, I have that, or I have a community that doesn't really support Two Spirit. I chose the Two Spirit community.
Mhm.
So because I kind of knew that this is going to be more supportive with my mindset and who I am.
Mhm.
So meeting with these guys and guys and gals and just like, of mixed tribes. So there was like, I think probably 10 or 12 tribes, people from them were represented in this tribal community. And we were learning both Cherokee and Lakota ceremonies and history and language and the kind of like the ways of the people. And I think it was about 2011, and I did the Lakota rite or ritual oblation. So it's cry for vision.
Mhm.
So Little Bear put me out. And so this 60-year-old native is living in the Inipi or a sweat lodge for 3 days while I'm in the woods. And it's like November on the East Coast, so it's chilly. And just praying and meditating. I've got everything with me. There's no food that I can eat, right? So it's just like it's 3 days of like solitary meditation. So it starts with that sweat lodge, takes you to, and then they take you with grass robes out, and you're in the spirit world, and they take you out and put you out. And I just focused on praying and ceremony and what I've learned so far in the community. And a couple things came out of that for me, right? And it was kind of helped me. And I've always said too that really my indigenous connection probably saved my life, right? Because it was like it allowed me to see the path I really needed to walk that I could not envision from the point where I was at that time before then.
Yeah.
So it kind of like showed me, it kind of opened the door, right? So we don't know what's on the other side of the door, and we're just standing at the door without taking action. Hamblecha took me and opened that door for me. So out of that, I learned that, a couple of different lessons for me. The one was if you're in this life, you have to live it authentically as yourself. You can't just wear this costume, right? That maybe other people want you to wear. The other one was my brother Jimmy asked me what I saw out there. So, and he's referring to a spirit animal, right? Of what animal came to me during this hamblecha, during this time of sacred meditation and prayer. And it was a red-tailed hawk. So when I got back, I told Jimmy about it. And he goes, that's my spirit too. He goes, he's like, do you know what that means? I was like, no, because remember, super new to this. And he said, the hawk is the far striker. It sees, it protects the people, right? It stands vigilant and alert. And when I kind of coupled that with another thing Jimmy had mentioned in my first sweat lodge, which was our people do not put signs out and self-anoint as medicine people or leaders. The people themselves, the community know who the leaders are and they follow those leaders, right? So between those two concepts of the Hawk spirit and just knowing that the people really select the leaders, they go to the people who know can do what they need, right? And to support and embrace them and uplift them or help them or heal them. And between those two, that's what really dynamically changed my leadership kind of mindset.
Well, I think it's so, I love it because I think that not in American culture, like we don't spend enough time being quiet and really figuring out who we are authentically, like what is our authentic leadership style? Who are we as an authentic person? We just kind of like fall into these norms in the busyness of life, and then we don't take the time to like slow down, meditate, you know, figure out who is the person I want to be, let alone who is the leader I want to be, let alone like where am I drawn to in life, and then like kind of bringing that all together. And like I want to talk about the like the in tribal culture, like leaders are chosen, because that's a whole different like amazing piece of it. um, but like the authentic piece, I think is so important. And like in a lot of our trainings that we do over the course of a time where people will work with us, we'll have them put together like what we call these like leadership one pagers. So as they're discovering who they are, whether it's their personality style, their strength, they're talking about different metrics or things that they're proud of, or what is your the animal or something that you're drawn to, like having them really go into themselves and like think about that. Like I've always felt that my spirit animal was an orca, and like from a young kid, like watched Free Willy, was like, this is my animal. I can't tell you why, but this is my animal. And then went up to the Puget Sound, went like orca sighting kind of thing, and like had this moment where the first orca that we saw that day, like I swear it like stared into my soul. Like it like turned over and it looked at me and was like, I see you, Rachel. And I was like, okay. And it was a really defining moment for me.
Those animal spirits are strong. So, like taking all of that knowledge. So, I took a position at JP Morgan leading a marketing team. I came into an environment that was incredibly toxic. A little bit from the leadership of the team. That's why they were hiring me to kind of counter that, because I had that leadership skill that was more proven. The other person did not. And, with that toxic environment, there was a data breach with a vendor. There was all kinds of things that were happening. The team was getting burdened with a lot of work. They drew out the production process. So it was like super long and painful and 22 steps to get an email sent out, right? Like a marketing email. And it was painful. My one-on-ones with them were crying. Like we were both crying, right? And I did everything I could to support this team. And what I did was I took the learnings from that Hamlesha, right? The learnings of the truth of that red tail hawk spirit, and applied it to my job and to my leadership style. When I was there, they took my team so it went from 8 to 20. And there was no pay increase or was anything. They were just like, listen, this person's rolling off. We need somebody to manage these people. And just taking that in and trying to be a leader that was worthy of the people that I was leading, right? Like that's what it was for me. And I spent 5 years doing that. Most of that time I was leading a team. So I spent 5 years supporting people, helping people, giving people opportunities, right? People who wanted to step into leadership and management, helping them get that opportunity to maybe lead a project which had a couple people working on it, but not direct leadership or management capability. So like they still had to report to me, but they reported to this other person for their project to help them understand. So growing and helping other leaders come into it and step forward into that. And ultimately that team grew to over 50 people.
Oh,
And I want to share this one story. So one of my employees at the time who came in, she came in as a contractor. She was not born in the US. She was born in South America. She came here, learned English, and got a master's degree within like 2 or 3 years. Like just phenomenal story. She had a storied career as a creative director in Colombia. And, I wanted to bring her in as, as a consultant or, basically a contractor, right? Case had a real try before you buy kind of mindset with
Yeah.
staffing. So as I'm sitting in this meeting, I'm the only person of color, right, in this meeting, representing her and saying, I'd like to bring her in as a contractor for this. I think she can do a really good job for this. And the rest of the team was light skinned, like I should say, just call them less melanated. And every one of them spoke up about how nobody's going to understand what she's saying. Her experience as a creative director doesn't connect. Doesn't have a deeper bench of email, because it was an email marketing group that we're managing. And I said to him, I looked at him, I said, has anybody here ever been a creative director? And all of them were like, nope. I said, then you have no idea what it takes to be a woman and a creative director and to thrive and to get the job done for multiple years. I'm like, does she have a deep email experience? No. She's got 2 years of email experience. But can she learn it and spin it up really quickly and get the job, get the job done? And they're like, that was their question. And I'm like, yeah, she can. I believe in her. So I got her in as a contractor. She was super grateful. She was looking for an opportunity, and I was happy to provide that. And so we've had with her specifically, so most of my teams were probably 50% women, and most of those women were women of color, either Latina, you know, Black women, some white women mixed in, right? And just my team, like, we used to joke that it was almost like the United Nations, right? So, it was not just, you know, kind of homogeneous one type of people. Excuse me. And when we had some issues, right, where it was people maybe were treating her not how she should be treated, even according to the employment standards of Chase, I stepped forward with her, right? I stepped her through it. I was like, listen, I said, I need you to provide this objective information. I need you to work with Lourdes on getting her information. I will take it to their leadership team that for this one person, and I will resolve it. Pulled her out of the office. I was like, let's talk because she was getting really emotional. And what I did was I listened to what she was saying and I told her what I needed. And she delivered that to me. I said, don't trust in me, right? Don't have faith in me. Know that when the action I'm going to take, it is to support and uplift you and everybody that's in this situation. And like, so don't hope that it'll be done. Like literally, I will be scheduling a meeting as soon as possible and getting this resolved. So when I finally left Chase to come out to the Bay Area, she said to me, she said, wrote this beautiful card and like tears in my eyes, right? Because she was like, I will never have another like manager and leader like you. She goes, you were the warrior priest of this department. You fought for us. You you were not on a limb sometimes for us. And I did. I mean, I stood up to leadership and management. And they didn't really like it, and I got punished for it, right? Somehow, I missed a couple raises. My bonus was cut in half, like things like that. But it was more important to me to support my people and to let them grow, to thrive, to back them up, right? At all times. So I will take the beat down if it's the right thing to do for my peeps.
Yeah.
Like that's how I applied all this learning, all this, the tribal community and everything I went through to practical leadership work at JP Morgan.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it sounds also just a great sponsor for these people. Like I always tell people, like, find someone in your organization that can act as a sponsor, that can advocate for you when the door is closed and you're not invited in the room. Who's going to
Yeah,
advocate for you? And it sounds like even just helping her get the job, let alone like once she had the job, going and like fighting for her, breaking down stereotypes, biases, prejudices that people had towards her as a person of color, as person whose English is a second language, all of these reasons why she can't and like really standing up for her and others on your team, to be like, no, she can. Like she can, and she can do it better than anyone else at this table type thing.
Yeah, for sure.
And I also loved that you're just like talking about diversity of your team. Because I think a lot of times when people think about diversity, they just think about race. Like they're like diversity, race, let's have, a few people of different ethnicities here, but it sounds like you were really intentional about making your team diverse and the value that it adds to the team. So I'm curious, when it comes to diversity of a team, like what are some things that you have found as like benefits to having a diverse team, whether it's ethnically, racially, locationally, age, gender, all the pieces. Like when have you seen that kind of been be a benefit on a team that you've been a part of?
So, I was going to say, I've seen it on almost every team that I've been a part of, right? It's like the benefit is that the team can gel, and the team has common cause and can fight, right? Like diversity doesn't really factor into the function of it for me. And I just want to be clear too, like when I say I managed and led and handpicked and hired a diverse team, these were the best people, right? So like, and how I come about that is like, and and like I said, this is a lifelong learning process. So I was hiring a guy, white guy, right, for a coding role. He had never done anything like that before. And I grilled him in the interview, right? And I was like, because he was coming as a mortgage banker and he wanted to do coding. And I was like, I said, the standards we have here are very high. And I was like, he goes, well, I've done this boot camp. I did this. I said, why do you want to shift this? And he kind of told me his story of like why he wanted to do it. So at the end, I gave his hiring manager the thumbs up because I did interview. I probably hired directly like 70 people in my career. And I've also helped people make hiring decisions. So I brought him on and he did well. He jumped in, he embraced the challenge and just did it. And I was super proud of him. And did that with another guy who was junior, like he was just coming out of college from, I think Rutgers or something in Jersey. And he was just coming out of college, gave him a break. And he said to me, like, we still talk. And he's like, you know what? I will never forget that day you interviewed me. He's like, I was like, it was intense, but he goes, and all your guidance, helped me get to where I am right now. And he goes, I'm leaving Chase and I'm starting my own business. Like he's doing a startup, like that kind of thing, right? Like, so working through and assembling the right folks in there. So when it came to hire a new team, one of the people was connected to the guy who just got the boot camp degree and wanted to join the coding team. Black woman who was an engineer, a mechanical engineer, worked for the US Patent Office, took the same boot camp as Bill. And as soon as because what I hired for is not ethnicity, religion, gender. I hire problem solvers, right? Because I know what I'm looking for. I'm looking for self-starters who can go in there, they embrace the problem, they work the problem, and they kind of move on to the next thing, right? They love a challenge.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for, right? And that's why my teams are so diverse, because I'm not looking at diversity or inclusion. I'm like, inclusion happens anyway. I'm focused on just like, here's what I need from people, right? If you can do this, that's what I'm looking for, And I don't want to make it sound like I don't care, but I'm not focused on the outer package. I'm focused on your minds, right? Like that's what I'm looking for because that's what I need next to me. I need those minds, I need those brains. And if it comes in any kind of package that, somebody might not look to first, that's not me,
Yeah.
and like part of that too is like also helping them and doing things that they might not expect or not know that I'm doing until like years later, where
Yeah.
I've had team members go, I've never had a manager like you. Like it took me 5 years to realize what you were telling me before you left.
Yeah.
And then I realized what you were doing. And I'm like, I will never have somebody like me, like, again, because I had responsibilities as a leader because we have to like maintain a certain kind of standard.
Yeah.
So you can't have those super frank conversations and share all the tea with everybody. but you can nudge them in directions to get them to start thinking and understanding for themselves.
Yeah.
So like that's kind of what I do. So I'm like it sounds so stupid to say this, but it's like I do work in mysterious ways sometimes, right? It's like, and like you might not get it at the time, and but I think down the line you will. I'm sorry, did my video just freeze?
Oh, yeah, just a little bit.
Okay. I don't know. I've got a full network signal, so sorry about that. So, yeah, so for me, it's like, you're going to probably use what I've taught you or shared with you or pointed out to you at some point. Like the one woman came in as an engineer and took a coding job on my new team. I helped them get the highest salary of anybody that started in that department because I kept seeing the people getting hired at the lower end of the band.
Mhm.
So I worked with them to tell them what to ask the recruiter for. And then when the recruiter called me to complain, I told him, I was like, listen, the CFO has approved this money. Are you going to make me go back and tell him that you can't offer what they're asking for? I'm like, it's within the pay band. Yeah, is it on the upper end? These people have earned it, and I need them heads down on the job. When I shared that with HR leaders that I met years later, they were like, "You're the hiring manager we hate." I'm like, "Good." Because if I'm helping the people, right, to negotiate and to ask for what they want and fight for that, but not be overt with it, right? Um, then yeah, I'll take your hate. I'll take it every day.
Take your shade. Yeah, for sure. For- Can you tell us a little bit about your always say yes motto?
Yeah. Okay, so in 2020, I started my new LinkedIn profile, which is now the current profile. Killed off my other profile. So when I did that, I started building a personal brand. So I always call myself the trans menace that LinkedIn hates to have on the platform, but still can't get rid of me. And so I have this personal brand that I'm building. So what I was doing is after I achieved a whole set of career goals over 20 years, I set a whole new set of career goals. And part of that is being open and receptive to things that help me share the message, share the journey, that give me visibility to be able to have a platform to talk to, like what we're doing today, right? To be visible enough to be able to say, hey, like I want to share, and maybe if you can glean something from what I'm saying, that's great. Like that's what I'm hoping to do, right? Is just to share the journey and inspire. So I will say yes to every opportunity for that.
Yeah,
So no matter what that was, like yesterday, I did. So I think you and I met through that one post I had done.
yeah.
I think you might have stumbled on me from there. Somebody else from out in tech that I wasn't connected to asked me to speak at a keynote yesterday for the job searchers, right?
Awesome.
Because I'm a fractional doing like when I need, I'm looking for some full time. So, so I was able to speak for 10 minutes and share tips, right, with people. So and within the week of you and I talking, two more speaking things popped up for
Yeah,
me. So I've got three things in this week and next week combined. They just came out of nowhere, right? But I said yes to it because I'm like, it's important to talk about the messages and share the journey, and maybe hopefully somebody gets something positive out of
yeah, no, absolutely. And this is what this interview series is all about because it's hopefully going to give exposure to people who never would have the opportunity to meet you. Their paths would never cross because maybe you're in different industries, would never have the guts to reach out and say, "Hey, can we just network and connect? Can I hear your wisdom? Can you share your story?" And that's really where, talking to industry leaders like yourself and saying, "Can you share your story of what worked, advice that you have for people?" Is truly just impactful, and you never know who's going to be watching this and say, "Yes, that's me. Yes, I relate to that. Yes, I need to reach out or whatnot, or yes, this changed my life." So I love that. What advice, before we close up, what advice would you give to leaders who are on a journey of discovery? And trying to, are kind of where you were several years ago, trying to figure out what their authentic persona is. Because not everybody's going to have the opportunity to go, to a sweat lodge in a tribal community, and then, be kicked out into nature and say, good luck. Like that's not everybody's journey.
Yeah.
I don't even go to hot yoga. So like I feel like if I did go to hot yoga, that would be like my similar experience, except I would just be like wandering after the class. So like what would your advice be?
Stay curious, right? Draw from multiple sources. I always like to say that each human has like 4,000 ancestors, probably a little bit more, right? You have all this like just knowledge in the bones, right? Of different cultures, different things that make us who we are, right? So what I'd say is just like don't settle and just pick one thing. Know what your strengths are. So like kind of a little bit of inward reflection, right? So knowing like my strength was empathy, right? So like doing something like that. So knowing yourself, understanding yourself, and then continue to learn and look for sources of inspiration. Talk to others, right? And just expand your mind and really find your reason for what you're doing and how you want to operate and how you are and how you treat people, right? Like just like for me, that humblatia got me focused with that, the red tail hawk spirit of just looking out for people, right? And that's what I can do. It's always them before me, right? Team first. And that's my mindset, right? But find your own, be curious, look for that inspiration, and good luck and just do your level best because that's really all people can ask from you.
Yeah, and I encourage if anybody's watching this and they have a spirit animal or something, like comment in below. We would love to just kind of learn a little bit about your journey and kind of how you have discovered your spirit animal. So thank you so much, Taryn, for sharing your journey and your leadership insights. It's been a pleasure hearing about your experience and the lessons you've learned along the way. And for our viewers, if you enjoyed Taryn's insights today, don't miss other Break the Norm leadership interviews. If your organization is interested in learning how Break the Norm leadership can help you develop your greatest asset, your people, click the link below. Have a great day, everyone.